Is still a leave? Mr. Murray. How you feeling? I am doing well. We're not going to walking over the but I'm walking. You said when you're going to be a son, when they came here today? Oh, they're getting the phone. Yeah, first we can come in and but if they come in and donate to blood, it should be a problem. So why you not? Also, they use your blood to somebody else. Just give God thanks for everything. You never know. Just have to give God thanks and just tell yourself that you're better every day. Yes, man. Yes, man, that's true.
Well-needed conversation. So we're gathered here today to talk about workplace wellness for healthcare workers. And we know that we're living in a world where non-communicable diseases are rampant, and it's a burden on not us, not on us only nationally, but globally. So as we recognize World Health Day, which is April 7th, that's Sunday. However, we are commemorating it today, the 5th of April. And we just want to bring awareness on this topic pertaining to workplace wellness and its role in mitigating NCDs. So I hope you will stay tuned. We have among us this afternoon Dr. E. Smiles, occupational health consultant, and we have Mrs. Shereen Hemmings, who is the medical social worker and the head of department there. And we also have Mrs. Ferron Shirley, who is a dietitian here. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves briefly and just to share in a nutshell what about the topic sparks their curiosity. All right, and then we will take it from there. So following that, we will start the panel discussion. We'll be asking each panelist a question based on their line of expertise. And then that will span approximately 50 minutes. Following that, we will have a little break, yes, and then we will have a brief presentation about exercise, because we know the role exercise also plays in wellness. And following that, we will take your questions and the panelists will answer to the best of their abilities. So please stay tuned for the persons who are able to come and fill the house. We have some booths at the back with some interactive activities. You can come and learn some more about diet and exercise. So come on in if you can. Come in person and let's make this a very fun and enlightening afternoon. But before we go on, I'm just going to ask the persons in there if you could just put your phones on silent or vibrate, right, before we start. All right, so we will start with Dr. Ismail.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I think this conversation is really quite overdue. So I am occupational health consultant for the University Hospital of the West Indies. Our unit has existed from when I was hired here in 2017. And wellness is a very big concern for us as occupational health physicians. As a matter of fact, in many workplaces, it is the occupational health team that leads the wellness program. So it is of significant interest to me.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shireen Williams-Hemmings, being clinical
Just
social.
I don't think it's on.
Right, so I am a clinical social worker by occupation. I am the current director for Department of Medical Social Work. And likewise, as Dr. Ismail said, I am excited that we have initiated this venture. I think it's an area that we do not pay enough attention to. We are quite busy focusing on our patients who accesses the services of the hospital, but it's extremely important that we pay attention to our wellness as healthcare providers, as we can possibly experience secondary traumatization and ultimately become quite burnt out and overwhelmed by our jobs. So I'm very excited to be a part of this venture, and I'm really happy that it has commenced, and I look forward to us partnering with occupational health and physiotherapy and dietetics to build this and help each other to be as best as what we do and be the best for ourselves and families. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Mrs. Farron Shirley. I'm an assistant dietetics at the Department of Dietetics, assistant dietitian rather at the Department of Dietetics. I too am excited for this discussion. Too often times we catch NKDs, CKDs are in their late stages rather than the preventative measures. And the discussion is important to begin at preventative rather than in the curative phase.
Right. I also could agree. All right, so let's jump right into it. All right, and I like what you said, an ounce of prevention is better than cure, and that is what ultimately our aim is. So I'm going to start off with Dr. Miles, and I really want to know why really is this topic of workplace wellness so important right now to this audience?
Okay, so especially since the pandemic,
Mhm.
and also since the recent technological advances, social media and so on. The workplace has become increasingly demanding. There's increased distraction among among workers in general, and less focus while doing their work, or even in terms of taking care of themselves. There's a lot of focus on what is happening on social media. How can I be, perhaps you may say, someone that I'm not? In addition, occupational demands are ever increasing. I remember when I started working, and I won't tell anyone here, but it's a long time ago, the demands, even for healthcare workers, was not anywhere as great as it is now. both in terms of time and in terms of mental demand.
Right.
And with the changes in the whole healthcare industry, we are now more faced with staff shortages and occupational stress. So I think it is very important at this moment. I would say imperative that we start to have this conversation.
Right, right. And we will be talking more about stress and mental health because it is really, really alarming. So you mentioned that. So what would you say is the biggest occupational hazard or challenge facing us healthcare workers with regards to this topic today?
Okay, so we most of us, if not all of us, except probably for administrative people, we have a problem of work pressure and time management. And in order for you to practice wellness, because this is an active process for you, for yourself, you have to have some time or you have to make some time. And time management is a problem. But one of the biggest thing in the healthcare industry is actually the healthcare worker culture, which we, probably not the younger ones, but the older ones of us and those before us, created. And so there's a lot of stigma attached to being a healthcare worker, and the fact that a healthcare worker should be either a miracle worker, somebody who never gets ill, somebody who doesn't need lunch, all of these, the stigma, somebody who cannot have a mental health illness, so it is there, and it is among us and our colleagues as well. And in an institution like this, especially because we're a training institution, you find that people become afraid as well to even admit that they are going through tough times, because they're afraid that they will not get through their course.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And I just want to jump quickly to Mrs. Cummings while we're on the topic of mental health and stress. What would you say is the biggest or most common misconception about mental health, especially in our context?
Right. I would say one of, or probably the biggest misconception is that mental health issue, persons having a mental health issue is as a result of like personal weakness or some character flaw, and that, there's a specific person that may experience mental health issues. Mental health is on a continuum, and you move from one point of the scale to the next, starting with having good mental health and obviously shifting to shifting to affected, and it ultimately goes to having ill health. But we fail to recognize that in order for us to have good and maintain good mental health, it's a constant process. You have to work at it. So it's not about how strong a person is, whether physically or psychologically, not being able to function with the daily stresses of life. It's not really an indication of your physical strength. It's about working on managing your stress. So it's about setting priorities, managing competing priorities, taking time out to work on you, to have some amount of rest and relaxation. So it's not a character flaw. It's not something that only affects specific persons. It can affect all of us, from from Dr. Ismail's here to myself, to Ms. Shirley, anyone really, and whether one person or the other may experience, adverse childhood experience, have adverse childhood experiences that can compound our susceptibility to poor mental health. And we may not even recognize that we are affected by these childhood experiences. So there are a lot of factors, but I think one of the main issues that we don't have good insight into what can alter our mental wellness, and we may think, oh, this can never happen to me, but it might very well,
Oh, okay. And what struck out to me is that you said mental is on a continuum.
Yes.
And persons sometimes just affiliate it with like something is wrong with you. And I think that's why persons are afraid sometimes to say, be vulnerable.
Right.
Especially in our case, because as Dr. Ismail was saying, oh, we might see ourselves as a superhero. We don't know when to stop and all of those things, but we're all human beings and we have to be vulnerable if we want to heal and be our best selves. So on that same topic, Mrs. Hemmings, in what capacity, how can a medical social worker contribute positively to our well-being as healthcare workers? We know we see you guys on the wards, most times talking to some of the patients, but how can you help us within that capacity or even more?
All right, so one of the misconceptions about social workers
Yes, please clarify.
is that we take away children from their families. If you want a pin to an anchor, go check social work. If you want a bus fare, go check social work. You need some food, check social work. But social workers are trained as counselors as well. But sometimes it depends on the environment that you operate in, that the functions that you would carry out will be determined. Within the hospital setting, you had mentioned that you'd see us on the wards, that sort of a thing. And of course, our roles will deviate from one patient to the next, but one of the things that we will provide is counseling sessions. And even for myself as a clinical social worker, it means that I would have gone on further, acquired additional training to do psychotherapy. Now, in the scope of assistance to healthcare providers, social workers can help their fellow colleagues to manage their stress. So we look at stress management, we look at coping mechanisms, because we would have been exposed to human knowledge about human development, human behavior. We have that information as to what should be happening at a particular stage in your life, and by extension, help persons to navigate difficult situations. So we have to also remember that we do not exist in isolation of our social environment.
Right.
So you have persons coming to work who have challenges, at home, and they're coming to offer care. So us as social workers, if our healthcare, and let me try to navigate this a little delicately, because social workers are also overburdened. They're also stressed and can be overwhelmed because we're responding to all patients who are referred. Not to say that we wouldn't extend services, which we do extend services to our fellow colleagues, but they too would have to manage their own stressors in order to be functioning optimally. So providing intervention, so whether for myself, psychotherapy, and I would meet on a consistent basis with my clients. Some persons may just need a few sessions just to help them to kind of decompress, to voice issues that are affecting them, and to strategize as to how they can improve their current functioning. So from that lens, or from that aspect, social workers can help. It may be a case where we can link our fellow colleagues to external services that can help them to navigate whatever issues they're having. So again, it depends on the nature of the case. Oftentimes than not, I would see staff comfort level and other factors being considered. But it's more about helping fellow colleagues to understand what they're currently experiencing and charting a way forward as to how to manage. Because stress exists with different stressors, and we cannot operate in isolation of problems. We have no control of that. But it's being able to manage and to move forward so that we do not become overwhelmed.
Okay, so if, for example, I'm feeling stressed on a particular day, I just feel like I'm up to the brim, can I just come to the department, and how does it work? Like book an appointment?
Yes, you can. If you feel overwhelmed or triggered, particularly, and you feel like, like a pressure cooker and you're about to explode, you don't need an appointment to come. There has been instances where healthcare workers experience a loss, like a sudden loss, and they're in a state of, just chaos at that moment. You just walk in and someone, oftentimes and not, there's a social worker in the department. But for further interventions, then appointments are made on a consistent basis.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, moving on to some juicy matter. Mrs. Shirley, why is this topic of food and beverage particularly important for healthcare workers? We need to hear.
Yeah, it is very important for healthcare workers to pay attention to what they're putting in their body, because in a diesel car, what would we put gasoline? Would we know? Right? So we are what we eat. So what we put in our body is what we get out. So what I would encourage healthcare workers to eat a balanced diet and actually practice what we preach, because sometimes we're telling our patients not to do this, not to do that, limit this, stay away from this, and we ourselves are not doing that. So we need to start practicing what we preach.
Okay.
That's very important. So
yes. So what is the biggest challenge you think is facing us now about food and workplace wellness? What do you think is the biggest challenge?
the biggest challenge may be availability, time, cost. All right, so I said availability. So if somebody eats plant-based meals or wants plants, where would they get it? They get meat, do they walk to coffee? Do they? So availability is a problem.
Oh,
Cost is a problem.
okay.
Persons are looking at it, why am I going to buy a salad for $2,000 when I can get a patty for $250 or whatever? That's cheap, right? Why am I going to buy a fruit for this money when I can just buy a little sweet biscuits for $1? So it's like cost is a factor. In addition to time, majority of us are always on the go. We're not going to join a long line for food. So sometimes as healthcare workers, we forget to fuel our system and say, oh, I don't need breakfast, I don't need lunch, maybe dinner. So that is the challenges that we're facing.
Wow, okay, yes, and I'm sure all of us here and online can agree with that, but we're gonna delve into some more tactical matters as it relates to that as we go on. So we're talking about workplace wellness, right? Particularly for healthcare workers. So, Dr. Eastmans, what would you say are the long-term consequences if we ignore this topic, especially for healthcare workers.
Okay, so already in our healthcare population, many people may not know this, but we are having serious issues with burnout and psychological issues. And so if we are gonna have increase in burnout, we are likely to have attrition, meaning people leaving the profession. And this is not a UHWI phenomenon, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yes.
And this is why people at university, healthcare workers at university hospital are in so much demand in the US or in the UK. But if you look at the news, you will hear healthcare workers in the NHS in the UK striking. So we are leaving from one situation that we think is not as good because the pay is better somewhere else. And that other set is leaving from there. I think some of them are coming out of the profession. And I think some of them are probably finding other jobs to do. So apart from that, we're gonna have increasing ill health among healthcare workers, both mental and physical. Likely increase workplace injuries, likely increase errors. Sometimes we're not even sure at the moment, are we keeping tab of the errors that are being made, right? I know we are not as litigious as society as, for example, the US. And so when errors are made, sometimes our patients don't, take legal action against us. But is that what is going to happen if we have more errors? And ultimately, we're going to have poor customer service, right? And poor relationships with our colleagues as well. It's not looking good as to if we don't pay attention to this, what we have.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear. And the point you made about the errors as well. And, we're a third world country, sometimes we get away things, but if we're not paying attention to our health and the burnout and all that, we can put the patient and ourselves as well. So it's really, really important that we shine some light on that. And Mrs. Hemmings, along that same, line, why should the healthcare worker need to care about workplace wellness or workplace wellness programs, for that matter?
It comes back down to maintaining good mental health as well, because healthcare workers exist or they function in, I would say, a high stress area.
Yes.
This hospital here, there are so many patients who access our services, ranging from quite a bit. So we're talking about a high patient to HCW ratio. And as I mentioned earlier too, we do not exist in isolation of our social environment. So there are stressors in existence there as well. So if we do not take the time to prioritize our mental wellness, then we are going to be in trouble. It's almost like multiple competing forces at each other. Something will have to give. And Dr. Ismail spoke about making mistakes, patients probably seeking legal reform. And then what happens? So that it's further stress for the healthcare worker. So essentially, I'm just piggybacking a little on what Ms. Shirley said earlier, we need to start thinking about preventative measures rather than curative. We need to make a concerted effort to respond to our bodies, because our bodies tell us when we need to slow down, we need to take a break, and we need to listen.
Yeah.
Because it will not bode well for us, for our loved ones, for the patients that we serve, and ultimately for the hospital on a whole, because then we're going to find a situation where multiple errors are being made. Unfortunately, we may have patients who lose their lives because of those errors, and we could have prevented that if we put measures in place, if we are strategic, if we're
Right.
specific in our efforts, and we maintain the things that we would have set out to accomplish. Because we're not robots, you know, we will have a breaking point, and if we do not pay attention, and if we do not put what we are preaching to our patients in practice, we're going to be in big trouble.
Wow.
And can I just
Sure.
interject
Yes.
in this topic, to say that we have just done an analysis, and every year we do an analysis of incidents that occur, that are reported in this hospital, and incidents where our healthcare workers seek medical attention at A&E. And last year, 2023, we have seen a significant rise in incidents. Now, if we have an increase in incidents, we're talking about injury to healthcare workers, all right? And we are talking about the larger number of people who we have to attend to because of injury and incidents. It's also costing the hospital more. So I know that people will look at wellness as a very airy-fairy topic, you know, but if we come down to hard facts, the hospital will be spending more money caring for healthcare workers, and there will be more lost time in terms of people on their jobs as well.
I think right there deserve a clap, but I'll keep my cool, but yes, it's really true. I mean, if we don't prevent the act, it is way more costly when it actually happens. It's just reality. And what you said, people look at wellness as an irreferring thing. No, it is very important, and it can save a lot. Right, so we need to really press in on this matter. And Mrs. Shirley, I think it's probably straightforward, but you can still measure what are some of the long-term consequences if we ignore this aspect of food, what we eat, with regards to workplace wellness.
The long-term aspects, well, basically, you hear me? There. So basically what would happen is what we're treating our patients for is what we'll have. So we're going to run up in the diabetes, the hypertension, the diverticulitis, everything. So basically because food is what we eat, and basically if we're not eating what we're supposed to be eating in the correct portions, we're putting ourselves at risk. So so that's the long-term effect. And then, as she mentioned, our loved ones are going to be affected. But if we're not at our optimum, how can we be of service? So productivity is going to decrease. So basically, the company.
Yes, it is very important. Absolutely, but why? I mean, what do you think, Dr. Easton? What do you think? What do you do to make sure that organizations that you work with are achieving their workplace wellness goals successfully?
Okay, so that's I mean, I think that obviously I am full-time here. I work with other organizations, but not as deeply as I do with University Hospital. University Hospital is quite unique and complex, because of it's a large workforce. It's complex because of all the the categories of staff that we have, the categories of rotations that we have, the fact that our workforce is never stable. Every 4 years or so it changes because somebody's finished with their postgrad and they leave and somebody new comes in, and every year some interns come and so on. But in general, I would say that I try to emphasize the importance of the employer striving to provide the occupational health minimum, which is their duty of care. And I think that environment and working conditions do impact significantly on wellness. In this age, we are spending much more time at work than we did 40 years ago.
Right.
So although wellness is ultimately an individual choice, that can be defeated if the work environment is not conducive to it. And it makes no sense telling people to exercise and eat right and deal with their stress if, as an organization, you are not striving to ensure that working conditions are conducive to it. For example, proper and accessible nutrition, humane working hours, and ensuring that people are getting adequate rest breaks. There are departments here where people are not allowed to take their vacation leave. There are categories of workers who do not take their vacation. And I see faces in the audience. Clearly, you work in admin, that's why you are looking like that. But my junior staff tell me that down there are people who have difficulty getting their vacation leave. So we know that these people are entitled to these things based on their contract. But we should also be thinking that if we want a productive worker, we should want them to go and refresh themselves 2 weeks, go take a trip, go to a beach, do whatever, so that when they come back, they're fresh. We should want them to take breaks regularly from work. And we should want them to focus on other things that are of interest to them, their hobbies, their families. You know, we can't just think. One of the things I find is that when you are not at work, you are at work. And I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, because we are a 24-hour service does not mean every single staff is on duty 24 hours. And so it is respect for each other and our managers and supervisors having respect for the time when we are off. You know, WhatsApp is a beautiful instrument. If you need to call somebody and you think you're not sure if they're in, send them a WhatsApp and say, you know, I'm not sure you're in. This is not urgent, but if you're at work, can you answer, or something like that? You know. So we need to think a little bit more about these things in organizations.
So how do you make sure, how do you make sure that the organizations are actually achieving, if they have workplace wellness goals? Are you mentioning?
Okay.
So is there anything that you do specifically to measure that they're doing or achieving their workplace wellness goals?
Okay, so from an occupational health point of view, you can measure some of the things that you set out to do. For example, but as I was saying, apart from University Hospital, I do not get very close to a lot of the other workplaces I do. But I can tell you that that University Hospital or the Occupational Health Unit has a strategic plan. And each quarter we look at what we have achieved. So we try also to engage with our staff to get feedback. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but we try to do surveys and they're not successful. People don't respond. There's always there's a story that for some people that we don't complain anymore because nothing is done. But if you complain to somebody who has no opportunity to help you, how do you expect anything to be done? So I kind of there's a mental block, particularly here, where you will send out a survey, and even though it's anonymous, people think, oh boy, they might know who said it, or probably they will work out who said it, and I might be at risk. Even though it is anonymous, even though you put an age range, even though you don't ask them which department they're in, I mean, how will the occupational health know that? Know who you are? So I find there's a certain lack of engagement that needs to change for us to try and reach you, the persons we're trying to serve. Yes, there needs to be, this feedback. We need to know if what we're doing makes sense. We need to know if what we're doing is what you want. We need that.
Yes. So that's an appeal, everyone. What I think there's a saying that says, what is not measured doesn't get done. So if we don't get the details, then we won't know where to work on. So let us try to be a bit more deliberate when it comes on to, all of that, to actually engage in the questions. And just to piggyback a bit about the rest and the break, I think that's a major issue in certain areas of work in the hospital. Sometimes you just probably need like a 5-minute break, and it's so hard sometimes, and that really messes up your mental health. So I don't know how, if it is that policies could be put in place, like, to look at breaks for workers to get, if it's even a 10-minute or 15-minute breaks, actually does make a difference. Because when you get that and you get to catch your breath, it's like you're recalibrating. But when you keep going, then it's like you put your risk at being burnt out. So I don't know, to what extent or your scope is in terms of lobbying. Do you actually advocate for the healthcare workers in terms of needs that we may have that could promote our wellness? Is that within your scope of?
Okay, so within the context of, yes, I do, within the context, especially of the working environment, I can tell you we have had success stories, which appear small, they're not expensive, and we've had success stories just by highlighting to senior management. A picture, by the way, tells 1,000 words. So when you capture certain things on picture, and I think you send them to senior management or you send them to the respective area, and I think they might be saying, is this really what it looks like? And then you get some change, So we also, a number of our staff come to us as well because of being overwhelmed, and we access psychological support for them. It's also important for the hospital population to know that we are in the process of recruiting a psychologist for staff. And And we're not just looking at individual psychology. We are looking at preventative. So we did a little survey with our staff, and it was striking, especially in the pediatric wards, that people, and in AME as well, that people are saying, we have children who are ill and we get attached to them and then they die. And then our supervisors expect us next morning to come to work and do just as we did yesterday. So it is about doing preventive work with our groups, and so that is what we really want to push, to get somebody who's going to work with us, not just in individual but in group, in building resilience, so that people can handle it. It is no secret that what we do is very stressful, and I don't think we can change. So we have to just change our reaction.
That's exactly so. And Mrs. Evans, we are curious to find out, you're versed in the stress management and all of that. So we want to know a little bit more. What's happening to this man? What's a typical day like, and how do you manage stress? Since you're advocating for us to manage stress.
So my typical day,
It's not working? Try. I think it's try.
It's all.
No. Right on. In the meantime.
all right, so my typical day, being HOD has basically forced me to operate more from behind the desk and to a smaller extent, constant interaction with patients. So the overwhelming feeling of having to deal with patients on a day-to-day basis, I do not have that. Stressful though nonetheless, is navigating the challenges of getting the work done. Now, as head of department, there are going to be issues that are affecting my staff, and I'm expected to work with other colleagues to have those issues resolved. I think that's so I think you get the point that my stress is going to be a little different from my staff, but stressful nonetheless, because when you are tasked with completing a job that you are not in total control of, that within itself creates some amount of anxiety and uncertainty, and if you're not careful, being a bit overwhelmed. So for me, my day-to-day would be centered around admin processes, the operations of the departments, and ensuring that each area that we service, that there is a social worker assigned to all the areas of the hospital. So every clinic has a social worker that is attached to that area, and every ward likewise. So I am tasked with ensuring that the people that I manage are functioning at their best. They are responding to the needs of our clients. That's what we refer to persons who come to us for assistance, and that they too, from a personal and professional standpoint, are doing optimally. So it's about navigating the operations of the department, ensuring that we are responding appropriately. It's about ensuring that my staff, they are performing as expected as well, because they have an obligation to the institution, right? So they have to function and provide best practices or best services it's where we try to emulate a first world. We're not a first world country, but we work towards accomplishing that. And meeting established targets. So every quarter, I know that there are outcomes that I will be evaluated on. Was my department able to accomplish these targets? What was the reason for us failing to accomplish those, and what measures will be put in place to remedy that? So that in and of itself is a stressful situation.
Sounds a lot. So how do you navigate all of that when you feel stressful?
So navigating that is about managing the priorities.
Okay.
So ahead of time, I know that by the end of this quarter or a specific period of time, I will be expected to give a report on how the department has been performing. So it's planning accordingly and having a response to all the performance factors that would have been outlined. From, within or at a department level, making sure that things that have been established or targets that I would have set for my staff and for myself, that we're on target essentially, or we're moving towards that. So it's keeping a track of everything that is expected, and where help is required, obviously is getting that support so that, the feeling of being overwhelmed is not would say an occurrence for me and for us.
Okay, so, right? Okay, so prioritizing is one of the ways we can manage stress. Okay.
And I just want to leave you and the persons who are watching us, and persons in the audience here. When you're dealing with stress, remember the 4 A's. The first thing is you have to try to figure out what it is that you have to do, right? So can you avoid it? Can you alter it? Can you adjust yourself? If you're not able to accomplish any of those 3, the 4th point is accept it for what it is. I'm serious. You have to accept it for what it is and work around it. But if you get boggled down by this thing that is in front of you, and you have not tried to either maneuver yourself around it.
I'm not sure. Are they hearing you? The mic is on?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. You have to recognize what is in front of you and figure out how you're going to exist with this thing that is stressing you out. And if all other 3 fails, you have to accept it and move forward.
I think human beings don't have one other issue with accepting facts, we just always want to prove, we don't know when to stop. I think it's something innate, but what you said, the 4 is, so the first one is avoid, alter
yourself, do it, adjust, accept.
And accept. All right, so I hope we take that away. And from your experience, what are some examples of some effective team initiatives for good mental health practices? What can a team do to help to encourage good mental health practices?
From a team standpoint, we definitely need to try to build team spirit, camaraderie. I know it might not be the easiest sell, but what would be helpful is if, as a team, you take the time to, and I use this word loosely, fellowship with each other. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. You could have like a Secret Santa and Christmas time, or what we call Pixie, and you have established guidelines. I know that can be a sticky thing, but it gives you the opportunity to try to get to know the person. So it's about knowing your coworker, trying to create an environment that is mutually inviting and encouraging. You can also have like
quarterly birthday club situation. So any activity that is going to help to build teamwork or to build synergy or camaraderie, I would suggest that. But as I said, sometimes it may be a difficult sell, but we have to be persistent and actually try
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. Consistency.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
say.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes it seems like hard work, but if you want good, you know that for run, as I say, and also we have to really come out of complacency and really put in the work if we really respect and care for each other. And Mrs. Shirley, what do you do to make sure that you're achieving your dietary goals?
What do I do?
Yeah, what do you do? Share with us.
So I am one of, you're hearing me? I
Yes.
am one of 4 assistant dietitian in the department. And we have like a 600-bed hospital. So it's, I will get the referrals from left, right, and center, so, so time management is on. Right, so what I try to do, I make sure that I eat breakfast before work starts at 7, right? I plan ahead, but I think when I don't plan, I fry everything. Because I want to not fry everything, to plan ahead, so I can stew, bake, boil, whatever it is I need to do, I plan ahead. In addition, you seek help from those in your household, you delegate tasks. I take lunch and breakfast to work to ensure that I can have control over what I eat.
Right.
And I don't buy juice, so I'm forced to drink water. Drink. So, little things like that.
Okay. And what are some examples of a team-based approach in cultivating healthy eating habits within the workplace? Have you had any experience with that and could share some examples?
For our department, we had a potluck, right? So we used different recipes and we shared with each other. That was a good day. Nobody brought lunch to work that day, right? But what we could do as a team initiative, we could have water day only. You could challenge among your staff, your department. You could have carry a fruit to work, nuts as snack. And you can have a function where you invite us to talk with you guys to show you how you would eat a balanced meal and how to do it and how cost effective, and how budget is a thing.
Yes, I like that. All right, so we're winding on. So we want some practical takeaways now. So Dr. Ismails, what do we, in terms of we, hospital management, need to do to inspire more people to embrace this topic of workplace wellness? Let's keep it.
So, it is not easy because of the demands placed on the institution by the public. Sick people don't really care about your welfare as a healthcare worker. Sick people are selfish and sorry to say, but that's how it is. When we get sick, we deal with the sick. It's not to say that they behave any different. So, so it is difficult. However, I think that management needs to first lead by example, right? And strive to balance the need for a functioning rota with the need for healthcare workers to take care of their individual health. We have to be careful about the rota. So I see, as especially when we are managers and supervisors, we are so focused on ensuring that the rota is sorted. And if somebody, for example, gets ill and messes up your rota, how could they? You get what I'm saying? So we forget that the people on the rota is not a figure. They are a human being, and these things happen. I think we need to fix working conditions and work environment as much as we can. We need to provide tangible and meaningful support for employees. So mental health support, as I said before, and support for wellness programs and for workers' health. We need to respect people's personal space and time, and the need to engage in other activities apart from work. And I'm not talking about other activities that you're doing during work time, but I'm just saying there are other things that people do have to do with their life if they want to be wholesome. We should encourage employees to take their entitled time off work. We should do it because we're gonna get them to be more productive when they come back. We should ensure that our healthcare workers get adequate rest and time off work. One of the other things is that we also need to value the contribution of every level or category of healthcare worker, because it is every category that goes together to make the whole. Right. And so we should be careful not to make some people feel that they are more important than others, you know, and worse is where some people feel belittled. You know, we should be very careful that we don't do that.
So management basically to show like interest and care, you know, for the workers. It goes a long way. It goes a long way, and that's a motivational factor, because when interest is shown to your health, you know, it encourages you, or shows you that person cares. And what would be one thing you'd want the audience to take away today from our conversation?
All right, so
It's a lot, but
so it's difficult to find one. I would say as healthcare workers, we need to find a balance. It is easy to get caught up in the fact that, you know, we don't have time to go and eat, we don't have time to do this. So we need to find a balance, and we need to insist on that balance. And I have seen this done on wards. I remember we did a survey, and we went, and there were wards where nurses were given a particular time off to go and have lunch. No, that is not done on every single ward, but there are some supervisors who are doing this. So it's not impossible, okay? So we need to find that balance. We need also to work towards greater resilience while acknowledging that we are human. And we need to finally acknowledge our individual physical and mental limitations, and we need to support each other. So we are all in the same boat, really. And so we talk about the golden rule when we go to church, but the golden rule should apply all around. So we should treat others the way we would like to be treated.
Right. And Mrs. Hemming, what would you say to that healthcare worker who is struggling in finding the time to work towards achieving their personal health goals, or the work-life balance, as Dr. Ismails mentioned? What would you say to that healthcare worker?
I like to ask my clients, right? You're doing all of this, but if you should eliminate, or subtract yourself from this equation, how do you think work would manage, or home would manage? Oftentimes our family becomes collateral damage when we are no longer able to function, because fortunately, if either of us should not be able to return to work because we're unwell or whatever the case might be, work goes on, right? So our positions will be filled essentially. So I say that to say, if it's even 10 minutes, 15 minutes out of a day, use that time specifically for yourself, to become grounded, refocus, and to just use that time to just decompress, because mental illness or having poor mental health, it does not care or class, color, or creed. And if we do not incorporate preventative measures, we are going to be forced to deal with the curative. So it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. If you don't have a self-care routine, I would suggest that you do. If it's even taking a long shower or a long bath, if you're able to. If it's just scrubbing your feet for yourself, whatever it is that helps you to relax, to decompress, and to just be at ease, you need to do it. Because the stresses of life will continue. And if you don't take the time to allow yourself to reboot, you're going to be forced. So 10 minutes, you finish your lunch and you just incorporate like a mindfulness technique. Just pay attention to your environment. You might hear birds chirping for the first time. You may notice something different. The paint look a little different in one corner, but that is your quiet time. And I mean, just start there. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it's maintained.
Yes, I like that. It's tied to the routine. And I think we miss that sometimes. It's the little things that we do that really, it really adds up, and even when you say just stop and just look around. It might seem corny and weird, but trust me, you're a physiological being. So your body responds to stuff like that. You may not feel it immediately, but it works. So it's tied to your routine, and we will need to actually take time out to do that. I love that. And well, I guess maybe that's the last, what you'd say to the audience for them to take away today.
Develop a self-care routine.
Okay, all right, enough said. All right, and Mrs. Shirley, what advice or tip would you give to the healthcare worker who wants to practice good eating habits, but they don't know how? I don't know where to start. What do I do?
I mean, generally, everybody knows what it is to eat healthy. So what I could suggest is that they know what their goals are and they can assess whether or not it's realistic. Say, for instance, there's a healthcare worker who drinks 6 sodas a day. To cut it down to 0 is unrealistic, right? In a short space of time. So what you can advise them, have 5. Cause but aim is 1, but have 5 first, then cut it down to 3 and see what you can do with just 1 soda per day. In addition to that, it's not just to cut down. What do we replace that soda with? Right? So we don't want to say that, you must drink soda because dieting has to do with frequency. And yes, the diagnosis of the patient or the healthcare worker, but it has a lot of things coming together. So what's it that you're going to replace it with? So, healthier options, whether it be water or even fruit unsweetened beverages, whichever that is. Know your goals, plan ahead. As I said, for me, if I don't plan, I go in fries. I don't know if there's somebody out
I think
there.
that's my
I
takeaway.
don't think there's right? So what I do on my day off is that I pressure every piece. I don't eat meat, right? So I have to pressure every piece because if I'm going to think about pressure cooking, I'm not going to do it. So I pressure every piece. So what I do, when it comes to defrosting, I put it in, make it stew, it comes up. So I parcel them out. So I don't know if you can pre-plan and pre-prep your meals, and then that will be easier, right? Execute, say they can ask for execution from your family members and stuff so they can help you and just assess, did I meet my goals for today? How much water did I drink? Did I have a fruit? So say you can assess what your goals are. right? And you can assess what kind of labor intensive it is. If you're a porter, you know it's labor intensive, you're pushing people, you're walking up and down. If it is that you're in HR, you're behind a desk, you're seated, so the needs is going to be different versus labor intensive or the sedentary lifestyle. So
Right,
that is, you have to take that into consideration, because majority of us who drink our calories are not necessarily eating.
right, the soft drink
So
and
that
the
is
juice.
right, and the dietitian department, though very, very few in number.
But you guys go a far
We
way,
are-
very,
we-
very
we
crucial. Yes, very, very
So
crucial.
we can assist,
Mhm.
right?
And on that line, what are some quick little tips in terms of meals? But you know we're busy. The biggest X is we don't have time to cook, we don't have time for this. We just go grab something real quick.
So,
Yeah.
if it is that you don't have time, I mean, one pot meals is
Mhm.
a good thing. So like soup, simple, you have your meats, your staples,
Mhm.
and the vegetable, the pumpkin or corn or mixed veg, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I wrote down mac and cheese, mac and cheese, and you can easily incorporate some, whether it be broccoli or any
Mhm.
vegetable. So you want to practice the multi-mix principle, which is introducing more than two food groups at a meal time to
Okay.
ensure that you're eating a variety.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Thank you. So the one.
wait, before you continue, I
Okay.
just want to point out sometimes we need to assess our meals because, say for instance, I cooked rice, macaroni, and corned beef. If it is that the rice and the macaroni is a lot and the corned beef is just a little tip, you may not be eating the macronutrients in the correct with the amounts that you should. So you want to assess, is this a stable? Am I getting protein in this food? So something to focus on, right?
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Wow. That was refreshing. I think we need a little break. All right. At this time, I'm just going to um invite Miss Waters, who is just gonna come quickly and just, we can have conversation about wellness and we don't talk about exercise. Excuse me. So, come Miss Walters, just a little 5 minutes. Yeah, you can use that one. Yeah.
All right, so afternoon, everyone. So I'm Kimberly Walters, registered physiotherapist here. So we're going to be speaking on exercise. So broadly, exercise is any planned repetitive activity that is aimed at conditioning any one part of the body. Now, some benefits of exercise. I know we all know them, but I'm just going to repeat them for you guys. So the first one is reducing the risk of non-communicable diseases. So like your heart diseases, your hypertension, your diabetes. And of course, we all know how that plagues our population. So the second one I'll talk about is maintaining joint and bone health. And of course, as we get older, that will become increasingly more important for all of us. The next one I want to touch on, which I can't leave here and not touch on it, is stress management and reduction of anxiety. So exercise is very important for that. Also too, socialization. You might not realize it, but going to the gym, participating in an exercise class, such as the one that we have here, is very important. All right. So, we're talking about incorporating wellness at work. So for some group of workers, for example, those in admin, we have a desk job. It is important that you take a break, move up and down, take a little walk, whatever it is. You're around the computer, you can do a little neck stretch, make sure that that posture that you're holding isn't causing too much harm to you, isn't causing any excessive muscle tightness or soreness or anything like that. And for those who are always on our feet, like the nurses, sit and rest, please. That rest is also good. All right. And I know for a lot of us, we always have on like our smart watches and we have the pedometers on our phone. So a good thing is, I know you might not always get time to go to the gym, but at least try to meet your step goal for the day. I know most smartphones will have that. You can also use your smart watches just to monitor your vitals to see that you're doing okay. All right, so just want to talk more specifically on our wellness committee that we have here. So our committee, we have our program, sorry. Our program, we have classes on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. We have two classes, 2 times, sorry. So 4 p.m., 5 p.m. So whichever one you're able to make is fine. At each class, we have a registered physiotherapist that leads the classes. And also we have dietetics on board. So if you need help with meal planning and such, because you know that is also a big part of wellness. Additionally, we have a hydrotherapy class, so that there's also that option. And we have a relatively well-equipped gym to help you to meet all your needs. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Walker. All right, so at this time, we're gonna open up the floor to any burning questions you may have. We'll dedicate a few minutes to that, about 7 or so minutes. So, any questions in-house? We can check on Zoom. Could one of the ladies just check to see if there's any question on the Zoom platform, please? Any question from our audience in-house? No question about food, everything first? You're on top of your meal planning, not stress you. Wow. Okay, we have one question.
Hi everyone. So my question about, say you're on the ward, you have to come and reach by a certain time to sign in. You have to go on the ward and see many patients in terms of how often you're eating through the day. Can I get advice on that? Like, what would be the recommendations? For most of us, sometimes we don't get to eat until 2, 3 o'clock, that kind of thing, and then we eat from 6. Any advice on that and how that affects us?
Any advice? Well, each individual is different, so how it affects you is going to be different. So some persons can't always go that long without eating because they're going to block out. So, I mean, the body is very resilient, so it is not going to affect you now, but it may affect you later. So what I would advise is that I know you're on the word, quick things. I don't know if we can have a sandwich. Are you always continuously working? Is there a time when you can say, I'm going to set aside this time to have a meal? Because it is very important. So what you can do is to have a healthy or fortified meal where that, high fiber, so you can keep you full longer if it is that you're going to be working extended periods like that.
All right, thank you. There's a comedian down the back there. All right, so the high fiber that helps to keep us full. So, what are some examples of that?
Fiber, well, our high fiber foods, vegetables, and more importantly, our grains. So the unrefined grains, so whole wheat, this, brown, that, those are high fiber food and for provisions as well.
Okay.
I can't forget fruits.
And oatmeal too,
Right.
which is a good option as well. All right, any other questions about your mental health? We have Dr. Eastman and Mrs. Hemmings here to answer the questions. Come on, guys, talking about your health here. Anything else? All right.
I have another question.
Okay, sure.
So Dr. Ismail, you had mentioned that it doesn't make any sense complaining to someone who is not in a position to try to figure out a solution. So when we are in a part of the department and we have certain issues in those areas, what would you recommend then?
Okay, so I think you misinterpreted what I said. What I'm saying is that when we survey the staff, they tell us that they do not engage with us because if they complain, they won't get any answers. So it's not me saying that it makes no sense. They will say, I'm not gonna do this survey because if I complain, I won't get any help with it. You understand me? So I think it's a wrong attitude. It doesn't help. It doesn't help you to complain among yourselves and you don't bring, when somebody tries to ask you, right, about, what's happening with you, somebody probably are able to help you, that's then you don't complain, right? So I think sometimes we misinterpret complaining as well, right? So we will hear people say Jamaicans are complainers, right? So people will say they don't complain because they just get on. But if you don't give feedback, if you do not tell people how you feel about certain things, then they won't know that you want to have change. So it's quite the opposite what I think. So occupational health, for example, anything that in terms of working conditions or working environments, that you feel is not adequate, we may not be able to assist you with everything, but we certainly can look into what we can do. We have done so for several areas in this hospital. We end up appealing to operations or procurement or, engineering and maintenance, whatever, public health, or that we engage other services to assist in, getting a resolution. And I want to say to you that, as I had said before, we do have success stories, and generally we get a response when we send reports to management about, especially if working conditions are affecting employees' health, right? We do get a response. And these are in small areas, and perhaps those people may not say anything, but we do get a response. But if you don't highlight them, they may never know. You see? So it is important for you to engage, for the staff to engage when we have surveys. That's part of how occupational health works. How do we know what is affecting you if you don't tell us?
Okay. Yeah.
So is there a particular protocol in terms of how we can communicate with their department to find out regarding problems that we're having in
Okay.
those areas?
All right. So usually, I don't know if you had an orientation. If you didn't, I don't know why, but we do an occupational health orientation for staff. And during that time, we give our contact details, and we have all contacts. We have emails, we have WhatsApp, we have CUG. So all of us, 4 of us are in the team. All of us have WhatsApp. All of us have CUGs. We have email, and any kind of communication, we will listen to it. We will engage with you.
Can somebody read the question?
All right, so the question on Zoom says, what would you suggest to persons who are trying hard to lose weight, but instead they are gaining and that plays on their mental state?
All right, I think Mrs. Shirley and Mrs. Solis, would I got that first? In that order, you want the question to be repeated?
No, it's fine. Okay, what I could suggest is that maybe you can take a trip to the dietetics department where we can do an assessment, where we can identify, because sometimes you might think that you're doing something to lose weight, but it's actually working the negative. Like, so for instance, some persons say, I won't eat breakfast because I'm trying to lose weight. But studies have shown that persons who don't eat breakfast are more likely to gain weight because of what they're doing chemically in that fasting period. So what we would do is do an assessment, and we can take it from there to do an intervention that's tailored to. All right.
Any comments regarding?
I would like to ask a question. There is dietitian. There is a new fad called intermittent fasting. How useful is it? Because I can't do it. And I find that in the whole physiology that we have learned in the past is that if you do too much fasting, you'll end up having a rebound effect, and you'll end up eating it more than you if you didn't do the fasting. So can you comment on intermittent fasting, how useful it is, how healthy it is?
It really depends, and let me tell you, there are factors in that. So say for instance, so what's this about intermittent fasting is that within 8 hours, there's a window where you eat anything, everything, and then you fast for the next 12 hours. So that's basically what it is. But if it is that, say for instance, I'm supposed to be having a 1,500 kilocalories like for the day. If I'm taking in 300,000, well, 3,000 rather calories in that 8 hours, it wouldn't work, right? But if I'm taking in less, it would work for that person, right? For some diets out there, basically, like, I'm not remember the name of the diet. So what happens first is the water weight loss, and that is that real weight loss, right? And the thing is, water is going to replenish itself eventually, so you're going to have that coming back. So that is why persons gain. And realistically, there's a rule of thumb that you're supposed to, well, females can lose up to 1 pound per week, 1 to 2. For males, it is different because they have different muscle mass. So they lose more in a week. So for our bodies have a set point, and if it is that we're losing weight too fast, it goes into a negative, like it's saying something is wrong. I'm saying they try to hold on. So you have to lose weight steadily over a period of time for it to be effective and long lasting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we are going to wrap up at this point. Unfortunately, the time has come. So I just want to, all right, could the ladies just line up themselves, please? We're going to just do the vote. Thanks. All right, so did anybody learn anything, by the way, in-house, online? Yes?
I learned.
Okay. Even the panelists learned. I learned too. Yes. What's one thing you learned? Somebody shouts out in here.
Accept or avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Avoid alto and just
What does that have to do with?
Stress.
Okay.
now
Okay, good stuff. All right, so I just want to, first of all, thank the panelists for coming and for sharing their thoughts on the topic today. I want to also thank the organizers, the wellness committee, the physiotherapy department, Ms. Anderson for her kind hands, the IT department, and of course, you, the audience, both virtual and in person. Without you guys, we wouldn't even have this. So we want to thank you all for coming out today. You know, it is very important that going forward, we take what we've learned here and actually start to put it into practice, because we don't, we are, you know, we echoed it today. Yes, we're healthcare workers and we care for people, and sometimes we get lost in the equation. But remember, yes, we're battling with the hypertension and diabetes and all of that. And we are exposed to a lot of different risk factors that put us at risk too. So not because we're caring for people mean that we're exempted. So we have to pay attention to our mental health and what we're putting in our bodies. Because at the end of the day, if we become a statistic, how are we going to help the people? So we really have to put our health at the forefront. And, you know, with the support from management and everybody pulling together, I believe we can be a healthier profession overall and hospital overall, healthcare workers. All right, so thank you all. I just want to ask the panelists to come to the front. Can we give a round of applause to you? I know the virtual land is talking to you. Miss Walsh, Miss Walters, come, Miss Tomlinson. You coming? Oh. All right, okay, come. No, come, Patrice. Exactly. All right, so on behalf, they're inside. Okay, so this was the comedian I was talking about at the back. Okay, all right, so on behalf of the wellness program and HR as well, we want to thank you for coming today and for sharing with us, you know, about within your scope of knowledge, the importance of workplace wellness for healthcare workers. We really, really appreciate it. And I know in the future we're going to keep this going and we're going to keep that bond. So thank you so much for being a part of this initiative. And we are really, really grateful. So just to show our appreciation, we just have these tokens that we'd like to present to you. You can go ahead.
This one for this segment. Okay. So on behalf of the UHWI Wellness Program, I want to thank you for taking your time out to actually come to the panel discussion. You have informed us a lot based on their department, what your department serves in the hospital. And thank you for the advice that you have given us as healthcare workers. Okay, so this is just our little token of appreciation for you. So thank you again for coming.
You're blocking the poster,
I'm blocking it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. All right. Dr. Ismail, I just want to say thank you for coming here and sharing with us. And I just want to say thank you for advocating for us as healthcare workers always. Thank you so much.
I'm not even sure which one it is.
All right, Mrs. Shirley, your turn.
Just want to thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to us today. I know that nutrition is a very big topic and it's a very important one because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I'm just glad that you could have come and clear the air on some topics. So thank you again, and we hope to do this again soon.
Yes, yes. Hello, all right. Can we give the round of applause? All right. So once more, thank you so much for being a part of this panel discussion. We look out for more. All right. So if you're interested, for the persons who actually work at the UHWI, if you're interested in being a part of our wellness program, you can always visit the HR department or the physiotherapy department to sign up. Come and let's pull together to work towards your wellness goals. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Hopefully next time we'll make it longer and.
Just stop by, look. Anyone?
All right.
Next thing.
Third. Thank you for coming over.